And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another tremendous installment from very high above all the insipid and puerile forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Thursday. My God, it's great to be back in our downtown studio.
That's easy for you to say.
Hey, stop it. I'm trying to say how much I missed you.
Well, I'm trying to say, thank God I'm not in Cheyenne or Lander.
Well, this is true. Well, welcome to the program, my friends. We have a really busy show for you today. And just to kind of give you the rundown, at 8:30, we're going to be joined by Earl Collier. He is running for the House of Representatives, Wyoming House of Representatives in House District 3. And then at 9 o'clock, we're going to talk to Wyoming Senate hopeful Abby Angelos, who is currently a House representative. I don't remember her district right offhand, but it's
Gillette.
It's Campbell County, Gillette. Somewhere. And then at 9:30, we're going to talk to Gubernatorial candidate Brent Bean. So we have a really busy show for you today. But where I want to begin is just kind of catch up on things.
I was afraid you were going to say that.
Not the red kind. But it's been a while since Ken and I've had been able to visit. And so I thought we'd just take a couple minutes, go back and forth a little bit about his exploits. The big one that I caught was yet another encounter with the socialist Josh Durrell. I mean, maybe he's totally a socialist.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, he continues to say that it's his job to create an economic system, even though we already have one. It's called capitalism. He's the guy that continues to say that businesses can't grow and prosper in Wyoming without government. And he's also the guy that refused to tell the Joint Appropriations Committee how much money he needs for the upcoming year.
It's pretty clear he's convinced in his own mind that we're all going to get beat and that we're irrelevant. And after that's sorted out, then he'll decide how to make this play. So.
Yeah, I mean, he came right out and said, well, I'm not going to give you a number until August, which let's just talk about that just for a second. The Joint Appropriations Committee, both from the House and the Senate, these are the people that decide where money, where we spend money, where we don't spend money. You're elected.
Well, we make the starting place.
Yeah,
we don't make the final decision. The legislature does, obviously, or it would have been different last time. But yeah, that's where it starts.
But I think the bigger point for me, anyway, is that's a bunch of people that are elected representatives of the people. Senators and representatives. And so when you are part of an agency and you're sitting in front of them, there should be an air of respect. Josh Durrell is a government bureaucrat. He's not elected. He was appointed.
Yeah, but Abby wasn't sitting there, so we didn't get our normal respect.
Yeah, fair enough. But my point is that Josh Durrell did everything except be respectful of the people that he was sitting in front of.
Well, the first question put to him was basically kind of an offhand. We were all trying to remember about what it took just to run the administrative part of it. You know, what's the baseline to
Right.
keep everybody employed and the lights on. And he knew exactly what that figure
Of course
was.
he does.
But he wanted to play coy, and I think part of that is, see, you guys don't even know what you're doing. All of those factors perhaps weighing into it. I can't tell you what all of his motivations were, and it wouldn't be appropriate for me to.
Well, I
But-
mean, so let me give you an example of what we're talking about. So here is Josh Durrell just flat saying that I'm not going to give you guys a number. Here, we'll just play it off my machine. Here we go.
You want the video or?
Yep. And we got some audio there too. Whatever. Hold on.
Hey, you gotta warn a feller.
Well, all right. We still don't have it.
Yeah, it's playing.
I can't hear it.
I can't hear it either. It's something on your end because my end is perfect.
Well, I don't know about that. Well, you figure it out. We'll continue talking. But it's so Josh Durrell was asked a direct question by Senator Tim Salazar. Hey, what's the number? How much money do you need to continue working? And basically what he said was, I'm not going to give you a number. Let's see. That's okay. Now think about that. The co-chairman of the Joint Appropriations Committee looks you dead in the eye and says, what's the number? And a government bureaucrat says, well, I'm not going to give it to you. Here, let's try it again. Nope. You're not getting sound off the board, are you?
You're not sending me a signal. You got something muted on your board?
No, I do not.
That'll give us something to do.
Yeah. Well, all right. So that didn't work. That is going to be a problem later. So we'll have to figure that out. But the point is that Josh Durrell in no way wanted to play ball at all. So what do you do with that? You got some bureaucrat in front of you that just won't answer your questions. What do you do?
You do what I did. You tell them you don't want to play ball, you don't want to answer the questions, you don't talk about money.
Okay.
You know, we ain't getting any money. Could I enforce that? Well, he's going to come up with a number long before that. But I think that was just my way of saying, let's get real here. You know, we're supposed to be having a grown-up discussion. We're supposed to be working back and forth, and you're not even working with us anymore.
Right.
And I think that was pretty well established.
Well, I mean, it's a big problem because we give a tremendous amount of money to the Wyoming Business Council. They're involved in all sorts of different communities across the state, and yet they refuse to, in any way, work with conservative legislators. And I think the biggest reason for that is there's a view that you guys are all going to lose, and they won't have to deal with you anymore.
We'll see. They may be right.
Well, I mean, that's why we have elections, right?
Yep.
Okay.
That's kind of like term limits in Wyoming.
Well, it's like
I
term
just had to
limits
get that, yeah.
everywhere. You know, it's we don't have term limits. We have elections, which are the very term limits that the guys that wrote the Constitution intended them to be. All right. So enough about that. I mean, anything else happen of note?
Well, it's always interesting in appropriations, at least to me. But before that was the prior event was in Cheyenne. The appropriations took place in Lander. Was in Cheyenne, and I was at a task force looking into reducing the cost of health care. And when you look at this in perspective, Wyoming is basically a community of 580,000 people. And things were brought up, well, we have this liquor commission. And for those of you that don't know, all of the liquor that is sold in Wyoming is first purchased by the state.
It is a tremendous
And
building.
it is a tremendous amount, but again, we're barely over 500,000 people. So when you start putting it in perspective to other large cities or states, it's a drop in the bucket. But it allows us to buy at enough of a volume that we get a better price. So the idea is, well, maybe we could do this with drugs. And I said, what could possibly go wrong? You got this big warehouse full of drugs.
Oh, that's probably a bigger hazard than a big warehouse full of booze.
Probably.
And by the way, if you've never been to the Liquor Commission in Cheyenne, you should go by there and just ask for a tour. It is a gigantic warehouse.
Ask
and
for a sample.
oh man, well, it's row after row after row, and it's the booze is piled about 6 pallets high, and you never seen so much hooch in your life.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
But anyway, I kind of picture Wyoming as like this little leaf that's laying on the current in the river, and we're saying we're going to change the direction of things. Yeah, there may be a few things we can do to deregulate this or that. I think we need to look into some aspects of tort reform to try to reduce the cost of insurance in Wyoming malpractice. But even that, the carriers there's only a few carriers for malpractice insurance, and they work on a much broader scope than just Wyoming.
Yeah, but with healthcare, you're talking about a national problem. I mean,
Well,
it's
that's
not,
what I- yeah, that's
it's
what I'm
not a
getting to.
problem that originated in Wyoming.
Yeah, it's what I'm trying to get to is that this is a federal issue,
You're right.
and we are so far down the river.
Well, and any discussion of the price of healthcare, like I watched a Politics in the Park last night, and it was Brent Bean, Megan Felder, and Eric Barlow. And one of the questions was, tell me the top 3 issues that you're hearing from all the constituents. And it was as predictable as you could possibly imagine. So, of course, Brent Bean says taxes. He says that, people are worried about being able to stay in their homes. They're worried about, having a job. And, I think that, and, maybe I'm a little biased on this one, but for me, those issues rang true. Well, then the microphone went to Megan Felder, and she says, well, it's energy. That's what all the people, energy and education. Those are the 2 things I hear the most about. And then the mic gets passed to Eric Barlow, and he says, well, it's the price of health care. That's the number 1 issue that I hear. Well, I guess it all depends on who you're talking to and who is attending your town halls. But the truth of the matter is, while the state does have a few things to do with healthcare, Medicaid is a state-run program. It's not entirely state-funded, though.
Well, it's it's state-run to a point, but all the rules are stacked against us.
Right.
And
Yeah,
so
that's what I mean, right?
yeah,
It's
we're
only to a
basically
point.
the state of Wyoming is basically just a federal puppet there because we are addicted to and think we can't do without federal dollars.
Right. And as far as healthcare goes, there's very little that we could do. Now, Ken, you mentioned that we're only a state of, 586,000 people. And so whatever we do in the state, that's a drop in the bucket. I mean, there are numerous cities, a multiplicity of cities. Most cities are way bigger than the entire population of Wyoming. And so even if we were able to do something, which we're not, but even if we were able to do something around healthcare, it is not going to make any difference whatsoever.
Go ahead.
Secondly, it's not the role of government. I realize that government is intimately involved in the whole thing, but it is not the role of government. And one of the reasons why healthcare is so expensive is that government stuck its nose into where it doesn't have any business being. If you want something screwed up, get the government involved. I mean, a legislature, the number 1 thing that they can do is figure out 500 ways to make things more complicated than they already are.
One of the hard things about having been down in Cheyenne for a while is, I still agree with all of those basic tenets of conservatism. As Reagan famously put it, government's not the solution, it's the problem.
Yep.
And okay, that's true enough, and there's enough truth in that. But is there enough will in the population to throw off that burden?
I don't know.
And I would say no.
I disagree, and here's why.
Well, I'm glad you have some hope.
Well, I do have some hope. We're right in the middle of an election, and it's the job of conservative legislators, such as yourself, to get out there and make the argument, to say, elect me. These are the things that I'm going to work on. Now, of course, I can't do it all on my own. I'll be just one voice. And so the answer to that is elect more conservatives. Get rid of the redcoats. Because the only solution to the problem that you raise, that is there the will in Cheyenne, is you don't have enough conservatives. And so if you're presented with a problem that requires a majority of support in the legislature, the answer is make the argument to the voters. And in each district, and at the state level too, but you make the argument and you say, put us in charge. This is what we'll do. By the way, this is what we told you we would do the last time. And those are the things that passed. Need I remind you of the 5 and dime plan? Okay, the media likes to make tremendous fun of it. Oh, it didn't pass, it didn't do anything. Bullcrap. Every single piece of legislation in that plan passed and is now Wyoming law. So don't tell me that that the will does not exist to push conservative measures forward. It does, but there are 2 factors that you have to win. One, you have to have enough votes to push your policy through, and 2, you have to have a governor that's going to sign them, or not sign them and allow them to become law. And it just so happened with the 5 and dime plan, I don't think that Governor Gordon could get away with not allowing them to come into law. I mean, sure, he could have vetoed them. He's a lame duck governor, and so really would it have made any difference to him? Not really, not politically. But it's a big political mess when he has to answer the question, hey, why don't you think that election integrity is an important thing? So it takes a couple of things. One, it takes enough votes to push the measure through, and it takes a governor willing to allow that bill to become law. Now, where do all of those problems lie? Where is the solution to them? It's right here. It's in your own backyard. And so the burden falls on the individual person running for office to make that argument. Now, again, you got to have people win across the whole state. But that's the battle that we're engaged in. Winning the hearts and minds of the people so that we can elect conservatives and so that we can effect these changes down in Cheyenne. And I think that too often we get caught up in the belief that, well, we just don't have the votes. Well, in some cases that's true. Other cases it's not. I mean, I think the recent legislative history in Wyoming disproves that. Well, maybe not this last session. I mean, there was a lot of opposition in the Senate. The Senate is the place where conservative bills go to die. But that didn't happen in 2025. I shouldn't say that. To a small degree, it happened. But there was a lot of really good legislation that went through both chambers. And I think the difference being is that the Senate, for whatever reason, acted more conservative in 2025 than they did in 2026. And so, my friends, I mean, we're in the middle of the election. And the solution to all of our problems is in your own home. That if you're not willing to get out there and work for your candidate, if you're not willing to show up and vote, well, then you deserve the government that you're going to get. But I will always fight against the argument that, well, we just don't have the votes. We just can't do it. It's just not politically feasible. That's bull crap, because we've disproven that.
Let me finish what I was trying to say. You mentioned at the beginning of that, and it was accurate, your diatribe.
It's not a diatribe.
You mentioned at the beginning of that you were listening to the 3 running for governor.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we need vision.
Mm-hmm.
We need somebody that can say that's there, and they need to have a detailed plan. Things need to be worked out. And that's what I was talking about when I said, we sat around for years, we all do, as conservatives, and say, this is the problem. And we have a general idea, but we don't really have a specific roadmap. And so if we are going to actually make the difference, we have to come with a very clear roadmap, because people are resistant to a fight. And this is going to be the fight of all fights. Now, some of us, myself included, are right square in the middle of this and have been and are trying to continue that fight. And you cannot fight like that without some hope.
Right.
And yes, I have hope that Wyoming can be that shining city on a hill. We cannot do it unless we have a governor who shares the same kind of vision and begins to point a picture. Now, you mentioned the five and dime. Thank you for doing that. When each of those candidates came up, they said, this is the most important thing on people's mind. Well, the most important thing on people's mind when we took the polls leading to the five and dime were those elements.
Yep.
And we're in the process of polling the people again and finding out what's on people's mind. And there will be some changes. And one of the reasons there will be some changes is we did accomplish quite a bit, despite the hurdles, despite the roadblocks being put up by the executive and all those others. Yeah, we can win this. But I'll tell you what, folks, you sit at home at the primary, we're screwed.
Oh yeah. Well, and
You've got to be involved.
yeah, and that's I mean that holds true for every election. And you know, I always say that with the exception of 2020, there has never been an election in American history that's been wrong. Voters always get what they deserve. And whether you go to the polls or whether you stay home, whatever the result is, that's what you deserve, because that's what you allowed to happen. And to make it very personal, I mean, you can't clean up the state. We can't clean up Cheyenne until you clean up your own backyard. And here's what I mean by that. I mean, if you're the guy that's complaining about your neighbor's yard and your grass is 6.5 inches tall and you haven't weed eated in 14 weeks, well, you don't have any room to complain about the way your neighbor's yard looks. You need to get out the lawnmower, go mow your own darn yard, and then maybe we can talk about the yards in the rest of the community. You got to fix what's wrong in your own house before we can even think about fixing what's wrong in Cheyenne. And the way to do that is to get involved. And I get so sick of hearing people say, well, it can't be done. You know, I'm just one vote. You know, it was just, I mean, these problems are too big. Well, first, guess how those problems got too big? By you not getting involved and you not being the one out there trying to make a difference. And, you know, I mean, this program is a perfect example of what you can do if you set your mind to it. If one person can make a difference, and it starts at the local level, and then it goes all the way up. And, you know, I mean, if you're the guy that's sitting at home complaining, time for complaining is over, Jack. You need to get off your butt and do something. And what does that do something? Well, it means run for office. Okay, maybe you're the guy that doesn't want to run for office, or your wife would divorce you if you did so. Okay, fine. Go knock on doors for somebody who is.
Wife.
Go knock on doors for somebody who is running for office. Or if you don't want to do that, go write a check. Go give your favorite candidate $100, or maybe you're poor, so maybe go watch the kids for somebody else that'll go knock on doors. Or maybe you hate kids and they're terrible, and so but you make a hell of a cherry pie. Go make a cherry pie and take it to the next fundraiser and raise some money for candidates. What I'm saying is everybody can do something. And if you're just going to sit around on your butt and complain, well, quite frankly, you are part of the problem. And if enough of those people sit around on their thumbs and complain about things, how the problems are too big and how we can't solve them, we are never going to solve the problems that are in Cheyenne or that are in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, you have you've hit the nail on the head.
As
there.
I often do.
We were both headed the same direction. But, you know, I've often said Wyoming's biggest problem politically is apathy.
That's true.
So I found something here on the board that I think will remedy our problem. So give me a little sound, and let's just make sure we got it fixed before we go to the next segment.
Yeah, well, hold on here. Let me give you something. You see, we got to start doing like sound checks, right?
Yeah.
You know,
that's for amateurs. We're highly skilled professionals.
Yeah. Well, if you don't, if you don't show up and vote, this is what the redcoats will be doing. Got her fixed.
They're actually already doing that because they think they've beat us already.
Yeah,
and that's what we cannot stress enough. You know, the primary's coming up. Get up off your butt and do something, because some of us are out there beating ourselves to death, and we need some help.
Yes, we do. All right, so we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to be joined by Earl Collier, who is running for the House of Representatives from Campbell County. We'll do that here in just a second.
Are you watching what's happening in our country and asking, what can I do? Join the John Birch Society in Salt Lake City, June 6th, for a powerful one-day conference. The day includes a host of respected speakers, 2 meals, and meaningful connections. You'll gain clarity on the issues and walk away with practical steps you can take to your community. Reserve your seat today at jbs.org/SLC26. That's jbs.org/SLC26.
One of those speakers at the Salt Lake City event will be yours truly. That's right, my friends. I'm one of the keynote speakers at the JBS 2026 conference. So join me in Salt Lake City if you want to see me. The following ad was paid for by Brent for governor.
You won't find him leading a horse out of a barn or leaning against a corral with the sun setting behind him, because Wyomingites don't need a candidate who creates a good photo op. What you will find is a hard-working, experienced leader who believes Wyoming should always come first. A conservative grounded in strong values and steady principles. Ready to lead Wyoming the right way. Brent Bean for governor.
Today's program is also brought to you by Morton Buildings. If you're in the market for any type of building for your property, you need to call Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They're the best in metal building construction, and they've been doing it longer than anybody else around. So it doesn't matter if it's a garage or a barn or maybe something bigger, like a roping arena or maybe a giant warehouse for your business. The 2 guys you need to call first are Marcos and Jesse. Again, their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out on their website, mortonbuildings.com. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm David Iverson on a Thursday. Welcome to the program, my friends, if you're just joining us. We've got a busy program in store for you today. In just a few minutes, Earl Collier from Campbell County is going to join us. I really like that guy. I've had a chance to visit with him and his wife. Not long, but, 30 minutes here, 45 minutes there. And I really like those two. I mean, I think their hearts are in the right place, and that they want to make a difference. Which that is exactly what we were talking about before the break. That are the problems that we're trying to solve, are they enormous? Yeah, totally. They're huge. But how do you eat an elephant? You eat one spoonful at a time. And that's what you got to do, and you have to keep doing it and get people elected, and it's a huge task.
I think I would add this in that a lot of times we think, okay, we got somebody good elected, now we're done. Yeah, no. And I'll give you another example. You watch any committee meeting, and you don't see common, everyday George in there. There are a few, and they're getting to be a few more. Those are the kind of things that we need. We need the letters of support. A lot of times you don't bother to write a letter to your legislator unless you're angry about something.
Right.
You know, we get hundreds of those every day. Send a letter. Thank you for what you're doing. Offer some encouragement. When they come home, host some sort of a garden party, invite your friends over and let them talk to the people, you know. These are the types of things to get everybody involved that we're going to have.
So what you're saying, Ken, is you don't get enough love notes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
what
And
I'm hearing.
in the love note, be sure to include a check.
Yeah, well, okay, so there you go. There it is. There's the... No, I'm just kidding. So joining me now on the program is Earl Collier. Earl is running for the Wyoming House of Representatives out of Campbell County, District 3, right, Earl?
That's correct. Good morning, David. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, you bet, man. Thanks for making some time out this morning. So I'll give you the treatment that everybody gets. Why don't you take a minute or two and tell my audience about yourself?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Obviously, my name is Earl Collier. I grew up in Sundance, Wyoming, and my wife and I moved to the southern part of Gillette in 2013 after graduating college. Started a family here and started our careers here. We fell in love with the area and made this our home. We have 2 boys, 7 and 9, and a beautiful baby girl who's 8 months old.
Aw.
And so, yeah, that's the.
She must
that's
take
the
after
reason
her
I'm running.
mother, right?
Hey, that's correct. Yeah. So I've been working in the oil and gas industry for the last 13 years. Been a surveyor. Currently, I'm the manager of prison logistics, and my wife's currently staying home and educating our children from home. So very, very blessed. Feel very blessed to live in House District 3, and just a wonderful place to raise a family and kids, and we want to keep it that way.
Well, it sounds like you're a super busy guy. I mean, you got, growing family, taking care of stuff at home. Why on earth did you decide to subject yourself to the torture of the Wyoming legislature?
Yes, this is a great question.
I'm sure it's one your wife asked you.
and I ask myself, and I question as well. Yeah, very busy. Obviously, running a business as a manager, taking care of kids, husband, wife, the whole 9 yards, right? But Edmund Burke, I love his quote. He said, "The only thing that evil needs to triumph is for good men to do nothing."
Yep.
And as a father, as a man of God, to look at my kids and say, "Hey, look, the world out there it's rough and it's evil. Get tough." I thought that's not okay. I think we can do better, and I want to be able to look at my kids and say, I'm a good man, and I don't want to sit on the sidelines and do nothing while we let this slip away. So that's the main driver, because it ultimately leads to God. And with a lot of prayer, my wife and I, we've prayed a lot about this, and we've had a lot of family and friends praying about this. And it sure didn't feel like the right timing. I was like, Lord, I've got a lot going on. I think I have better things to do. And he's like, I don't think you're right on this. You need to listen to me. And you do. This is the thing that you have to do. And I'm asking you to run for office. So, there's a lot that I could go into that on the process on how that happened. However, ultimately, it just came down to prayer and asking the Lord, what do you want from me? And if so, open the doors so that I can walk through them, because I don't know if I'm brave enough to do this without you. And he opened all the doors, and it was like, all right, Lord, I guess we're doing it. That's pretty obvious to me.
All right. Well, first question, I guess. So if you're successful in this whole adventure, what's the number one problem you see in Wyoming, like right now? If you had to pick one of them, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a tough one to try and single out one. I think one of the big issues that I think we face as a state is federal oversight, especially in our state. When we look at things like the federal government trying to issue or mandate new sage-grouse core areas in House District 3, they're clearly just power hungry. And as a state, I think we need to push back on the federal government a little bit. We are a sovereign state. We are the United States of America. And I think sometimes we cater to the federal government a little bit too much. And I'd love to see as a state legislator that we implement things to say, look, we're not going to do the Sage-Grouse Core area. You know, we haven't had coal and oil and gas leases. Well, you know, like when Obama came in when Joe Biden came in and said, hey, no drilling on federal lands. Man, that hurt Wyoming. I was part of the oil and gas industry. That really hurt Wyoming. And so I'd like to see that we try and implement things where we say, yeah, that's nice. And realize we're going to have another president who is not pro oil and gas. We're going to have a president who hates coal and has a target on the coal industry's back. And as Wyoming, we need to start now while we have a favorable precedent to say, hey, we're going to implement things so that when that does happen, that we are not hurt. Wyoming doesn't need to be this boom and bust cycle that it's been based on, you know, who dictates the White House.
Okay, so you mentioned you referred to all the environmental regulations. You and I have spoken at length about sage grouse. Explain to me, can you explain to my listeners why all those sage grouse regs are such a problem for oil and gas producers? I mean, when you boil it all down, what's the issue right there?
Well, so a lot of the issue is, say that you want to do a gas well, an oil well, and you go in and it's a core area. You're going to have stipulations on when you can't be there to do those drillings. And even if you did get a permit to drill there you can't have your pumpers in to potentially fix things because it's the sage grouse core area and they're doing their thing, so you can't go in. You know, one of the other issues is if you even can get the permit. Many of those areas, they say that only 5% of the ground can be disturbed. Well, if you have a fire in the area, they say, well, that's disturbance, so you can't have a gas well here because there's too much disturbance. The sage grouse can't handle it. However, what I find very interesting is oil and gas are held to this high standard, but why are we putting wind farms in just everywhere? And why do sometimes those sage grouse core areas all of a sudden go around wind farms? There's a wind farm down by Glen Rock that has it just, and the core area is these straight lines that go around sections. I didn't realize the grouse cared about public land surveys, but apparently they do.
They're very good with straight lines, Earl.
They are, and so they'll stay out of those areas. But apparently, it's because we need to keep those areas out of core so that we can have wind energy. So it's clearly not. The energy industry is clearly not on the same playing field.
Well, and I think that's an excellent point. I mean, and what you're referring to is we tend to favor one, and we'll put industry in quotation marks, but we favor one industry over another one. And it always happens to be renewables, so-called renewables, wind, solar, those sorts of things. And the reality is that if those industries were put on an even playing field with oil and gas or with a coal mine, or you can pretty much pick any one of them, the wind energy is going to lose because it's not profitable unless you have government subsidies. And then you add these environmental regulations on top of it. And it really does make it not impossible, but really, really hard for our traditional extractive industries to produce energy because they have to follow all these rules when your wind project does not.
So the public sector gets hit twice, right? I get hit in the wallet on my taxes going out, and then they give that to the wind energy, and then that isn't sustainable, and I get hit when I get my energy bill. You know, our energy rates in southern part of Gillette have doubled. We went from 9 cents a kilowatt hour to 18 cents. We should have the cheapest energy in the nation.
We should.
Are you kidding me?
All right, so we pretty much got that one nailed. That it's that's a big problem. If you're successful, what are you going to do in Cheyenne to help out those problems that we just talked about?
Well, I think that comes, you know, and I'm not maybe the smartest man on a lot of these solutions, but I would love to work with other legislators who do have good understanding. You know, I think Harriet Hagman is trending in the right direction, and you know, she's doing the same things for Wyoming with like water resources and water rights. And I think we can follow that lead and say, look, you know, we're going to create legislation or somehow make it so that the federal government can't just come in and dictate how we govern ourselves. as a governing body, we can govern ourselves. So we need to be able to step up. I wish I could see the governor jump in on some of these lawsuits where other states have sued the federal government to say, look, you're not going to dictate us like that. And as a legislator, I'd push for those kind of things to say, this isn't okay. And as a state, we need to push back on the federal government, whether that's in lawsuit, whether that's in litigation, whether that's in legislation. Pick any one of the above. My computer's too loud. David, let me know if that's coming through.
No, you're fine, I think.
Jet engine of a computer over here.
It's all right. I can't hear it. Okay, so, that covers the whole energy discussion, or at least part of it. Let's talk about some other areas. Where are you at on abortion? Seems to be a big topic.
What's that?
I said that seems to be a big topic. I think it's an important one. Where are you at?
It is, and it's one I'm definitely passionate about, obviously, with my children. I was visiting with someone again and said, hey, why are you even doing this? This is ludicrous. You've got other things to do. And I said, quite frankly, I'm embarrassed as a Republican that it's still legal to get abortion in Wyoming. Now, obviously, we have a bit of a judge problem where we passed legislation to get rid of these things. A little bit, that's right. And, I think we continue to push for that. I am definitely pro-life to the point where life starts at conception. Why? Because we were created and we have a creator. And he said that I knew you and I formed you before you were in your mother's womb. So we have intrinsic value at conception. That is not diminished by the circumstances of the conception. Doesn't matter. Life starts at conception. And I would like to protect life for sure.
Excellent. And all right, so I guess another question related to that is we've had, and you kind of alluded to it with the judge problem. So we've had a lot of pieces of legislation that have gone pretty much flown through the legislature. Governor says he's on board, and then courts strike it down. So would you be in favor of a push for a constitutional amendment on abortion?
I probably would be. I know some people think that's, you're dictating what a woman can and can't do with her body, but
It's not her body we're worried about.
It's a new body. And these people that say, they get on this bandwagon, they say, well, how can you deny someone health care? And I think John Bear said, how can you call this health care when one person dies?
Yeah.
That's not health care. That's murder. You're killing an innocent life. And that's the definition of murder. I think I'd be for a constitutional amendment for that. I think that might be what it takes, or a change in how we elect our judges.
So this is Pendergraft over here.
Another country heard from.
Yeah. So the argument against is against running the amendment process is essentially, what if we lose? You're going to see untold dollars dumped into the state to fight this.
A huge amount.
Yeah, and
like
what
nothing
if we
we've ever
lose
seen.
it? And I have my answer to that, but I'm sure you've given it some consideration. Do you have an answer to that as yet?
So we're putting a dollar value on life at this point then? This is what you're saying is we could put all that money into life and it wouldn't go, so let's not put money into it.
That's not really what I'm saying.
I like your answer, though,
Yeah.
Earl. I really did.
Yeah,
but
that's not really what is being said. The argument is that if we lose this and abortion becomes enshrined in the state constitution, we'll never get it back. And
Right.
Essentially a certain amount of fear at going down that road.
Right.
One of the suggestions, of course, is, well, we need to do something about the judiciary. Instead of shall Judge so-and-so be retained, there needs to be a lot more no's. But I don't know if you've had a chance to ponder that and come up with an idea, but that's a question you're going to be asked a lot. And so give it some consideration and come up with an answer.
I think that, and this goes to your point, Earl, that, if we were able to get the language through the legislature, the correct language, and I don't know what that would be, but I think it would have to be crafted, very carefully. If you could make that happen, we would definitely have to make the case. But, broadly speaking, I don't know that I would be against having life be enshrined in our Constitution. I mean, that's at a very high level. If our Constitution were to say, every life is valuable, the question is, can you get it there? And can that language be written? Can it get through the legislature? And those are all like really big questions. So let me ask you another one as it relates to this. The judge problem. The governor pretty much selects all the judges. Well, he does. He appoints members to the Judicial Nominating Board, which the rest of those are the Bar Association and the Chief Justice. So really, I mean, it's the governor's pick all the way through. How do we get around that? How do we solve, how you termed it, the judge problem?
Yeah, and I may not have the answer either, but obviously one of the things that I could see is we could take from what the federal government does. Obviously, the president can select a Supreme Court justice, but then it has to be gone through the Senate and approved through the Senate. So I think there's something like that. I don't know if that's necessarily the answer. One of the other solutions is let's actually elect a conservative governor.
I have an option for that. He's going to be on a little bit later.
See that.
All right, so let's real quick. We've got a few minutes left, but let's talk about some other issues. Spending. Okay, we've got that seemed to be a real problem in this last legislative session. Conservatives said, "Hey, we spend way too much." The liberals, the redcoats, they said, "No, we don't spend enough." In your mind, do we spend enough money? Do we need to spend less? Where are you at on government spending? And if you want to cut, where would you do that?
We spend too much money. That's clear. And where we would reduce spending is, and I've already done quite a bit of door-to-door, visited with people in House District 3, and there was quite a few people who were concerned about money that we give to NGOs, money we give to, these businesses that seek the nuclear, $100 million. That goes a long ways in other places. So we give out a lot of money, kind of seemingly for no reason, just to try and start business. And I believe I said it in the Wyoming, the Crook County women's debate, where I said, hey, if it's not going to succeed without taxpayer dollars, then maybe it isn't effective or it isn't efficient, and it shouldn't succeed. As a business, you need a business model that you can say, hey, look, this is how we're going to do this. This is how we're going to operate. And so that's obviously one area. I graduated from the University of Wyoming in 2013 with a bachelor's degree in GIS. I was doing mapping. I started in surveying, and I loved surveying. I loved being outside. I loved being in Wyoming. So I went back and did night classes while being a father and a dad and doing these things. So I have lived a busy life. And I did cadastral surveying, and I graduated the second time. I love the University of Wyoming. We give the University of Wyoming a buttload of money. They also receive private funding, and they also charge their students to go there. They charge a fee to go to tuition. Now, and I know this isn't popular. Again, I'm a University of Wyoming graduate. I'd like to see the university get a little less money, and maybe YDOT get a little more. I used to work at YDOT. I think they are obviously shortchanged. So there's areas as a governing body that we need to spend money on, and those things are the things we need. We need good roads. We need good bridges. So let's focus on those things that the people need and want, right? And then the other things can come secondary. And obviously, we have too much money if we're and this isn't a state issue, but I live in Antelope Valley, and just right by my house, we're spending $900,000 on a park. We obviously on a park. We obviously have a budget surplus. If we can spend that kind of money on a park that was just fine, my kids played there, I played there. I didn't have any issue with the way the park was. So we obviously have a surplus of $900 million that we're putting into this park. Now, on a state level, that's going to be even more egregious if we just look at the numbers. So.
Okay. I mean, great. I mean, I absolutely agree with you. I think that there are so many places where, and you don't really have an understanding of how much money we spend until you're sitting in the gallery watching all these people. And I will never forget this, Earl. This was a couple of years ago, or well, now like 3 or 4 years ago. It was the budget session, and we had just gotten a whole bunch of money from the feds. And the guys on the floor, man, guys and gals, they were spending every dollar that was not nailed down. And one of the representatives from Gillette, and he kind of did it as a joke, Or to prove a point, I guess I shouldn't say it was a joke. It was Representative Hallinan. He come up with an amendment, and he says, I think he said $300 to have a plaque made, and we're going to put it at the law school that says, this building paid for by Wyoming Coal. And I don't know if 300 was the exact number, but it was a really, really small amount compared to the hundreds of millions they were spending. He couldn't even get him to spend a little bit on a plaque to tell the truth about where that law school came from. And if we can't do that, we've got a serious misalignment of our values. And one of those is just spending every dollar that's not nailed down. Well, let me ask you one question. Okay, and we've got 4 minutes left. So what about schools? We've had I've seen a lot of stuff about the recalibration bill. Where are you at on that? Talk to me. Do you think it was the right choice? Do we need to do some changes? Talk to me.
Yeah, I just visited with a guy last night, actually, and he was concerned about that and was asking me about what I thought of the Freedom Caucus. And I think they've done a lot of good, and I think the recalibration was super important. That is a Wyoming Constitution that they have to do. And so I think it was good. Obviously, there's hard decisions that need to be made within the school districts because they've spent too much money in other areas and they haven't been giving their teachers raises. So for the legislation to come in and say, look, you're actually going to give teachers raises. This money needs to be allocated toward teachers, and you can't just blow it on extracurricular activities. And I understand those concerns from, hey, we're going to lose our football program. I don't think we are. We're spending $24,000 per student in Wyoming. We are well funded. It's not an issue. We just need to reallocate those funds and say, okay, we don't need new jerseys and new pads and great big stadiums. And if there is a deficit there, people are probably still willing to pay $1 or $2 to go to your football game. We enjoy sports. We're willing to do that. And so we can put our money where our mouth is on some of that stuff. But I don't think that's the case. I think there's plenty of funding to go around. It's just how we allocate it. I'm a big proponent of school choice. I think the government has a monopoly on education, and I think they can do whatever they want and dictate how and what we educate our children. And I believe in the nuclear family. If you want to teach your kid at home about how it's okay to have 2 mommies or 2 daddies, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. However, if you're going to mandate that the teachers teach that in the public school setting, now I have an issue. And so I think what school choice does is it gives the ability for those people who don't want their children to be educated and brainwashed in this liberal mindset, that they can say, hey, we're going to take them to this private school, and this private school has shown that we care about academics first and foremost. We're going to teach our children to read and write in English. We're going to put number 1 in math. We're going to put number 2. So I think school choice is a way to actually fix the public school system. And I know most public school educators don't see it that way. I think that's because they listen to their administrative staff and they think they're brainwashed by it. We're not going to lose teachers because they're going to get laid off or something. We still have those students and they still need to go to school. You just might go from public school to private school sector and be teaching in the private school. And I'm going to guess that the private school is going to do a better job of paying and taking care of their teachers, because we're going to realize that our teachers are our number 1 asset when it comes to educating our children.
It's all good. I like all of it. Why voters should fill in a little circle for you, and then tell my audience how they get a hold of you if they want to talk to you.
Yeah, we are at a divide in Wyoming, and I think it's becoming more and more clear that the Republican Party has another party inside of it that can't get elected with the D next to their name, so they throw an R down. I am a 23-point Republican plank. I will adhere to those. And I know a lot of people think that that's some kind of purity test and that you're brainwashed and that you can't have free thought if you do. However, I think that the Republican Party came together to say, hey, this is what our values are, and this is an opportunity for you to come and align with us. And if you like what we have to say, we'd love for you to be in the party. And that's what I've done. I've said, hey, I agree with these. I want to be a Republican. And it's not a purity test so much as we can agree that we're like-minded. We can have a different opinion on a solution to something. But to just say, well, I'm a Republican, but I think it's okay to kill babies. It's ludicrous. So the reason you should vote for me is because I'm a Republican. and I hate that we have to caveat Republican. It just used to mean Republican, but it doesn't mean that in Wyoming anymore. And you can reach me at, my website is collierforwyoming.com, and my email is earl@collierforwyoming.com.
All right. Well, I appreciate it, Earl. Thank you for taking the time this morning. By the way, I did have a former career as a GIS specialist. I was, while you were talking, I was admiring the map behind you. But make sure.
I love it. I love maps.
Remind me, and I'll show you my 1884 map of Wyoming sometime.
I love it.
All right, Earl, I appreciate it. And keep me posted on how your race is going.
All righty. Thank you for having me on, David.
All right,
Have
thanks.
a good day.
All right. Well, that was Earl Collier, who is running for the Wyoming House of Representatives in House District 3. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk to Representative Abby Angelos, who is running for the Senate. Back in a minute. I know that you think it's spring and that the weather is just going to continue to warm up and you don't have to worry about snow or ice or 30-degree temperatures anymore. In case you've forgotten, this is Wyoming, my friend, and that sort of thinking doesn't work here. 1 minute, it could be 75 and sunny, and 10 minutes later, snow. Whatever the weather, you need a pair of socks that'll keep your feet cool and dry even on the hottest of summer days. And if you happen to run into that spring snowstorm, you'll stay nice and toasty warm. Well, your feet anyway. To get you a pair, go to the website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. These are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election.
Siberia,
Nova Scotia.
I'm definitely moving to Canada.
Straight to hell. Iceland.
France.
Asia's pretty cool.
And has the last year and a half been more than you could bear? Well, if it has, you've come to the right place. Call my friend Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property. Everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day.
Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Thursday. Thank you for joining us, my friend. Thank you for everything you do for this show. By the way, if, every time you listen to an episode or watch a show, make sure that you like it, that you share it, that you send it to everybody that you know. And if you happen to listen to it on a podcast or on YouTube, make sure that you leave me a review. I know everybody says that, and you probably get tired of hearing it. But the truth is, it really does help with the algorithm and helps, broaden the show and get our message out to more people. So just make sure that you can do that. Do that for me. I would appreciate it.
Did you say algorithm?
No, algorithm.
Oh, okay.
Not Al Gore. If I could fire you for saying that word in my studio, I would. But too bad it's your studio.
Al Gore.
All right. Well, now we're joined by Representative Abby Angelos. She's running for the Wyoming Senate out of Campbell County. Abby, welcome to the program.
Thanks, David. I hope you can hear me okay.
Oh, yeah. Sounds great.
All right.
How are you this morning?
Well, thanks. I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I appreciate you showing up, unlike your opponent, who apparently doesn't show up to things. So I appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. It's important to, speak directly to the people. That's why I'm here.
I couldn't agree more. So it's been a while since you've been on the show, like years it feels like.
Yeah.
So why don't you take a minute or two and just tell my audience about yourself?
Yeah. So I am born and raised in Campbell County. My family has had a business here for decades, almost over 65 years. Grew up here as a pastor's kid. My dad has pastored a church here for 40 years. Married my high school sweetheart, have raised my 3 kids here. I did move away for a little stint in Portland, Oregon.
We all have those adventures. I did that too.
Yeah,
Not
realized
Portland.
we wanted to come home, and we did. So we've lived here. My husband worked in the oil and gas. I've been in all kinds of ministry positions, youth ministry, women's ministry, young adults ministry. And, when COVID hit and they were masking my kids and mandating that people get vaccines, that really lit a fire under me. I was always interested in national politics, but never state. So it really lit a fire in what was going on. My husband and I had to take, when oil goes negative, there's not a whole lot of jobs.
Yeah, especially in
So-
Campbell County.
Yeah. So we took our part-time gunsmithing business full-time during COVID and have been navigating a small business ever since. And if you can imagine how that's gone under the Biden administration, that was fun, not. But it's been an adventure. And so representing the people of Campbell County, it's truly an honor. I enjoy it. Ministry is similar to politics. I tell people that all the time. And I enjoy advocating for them and listening to them, and it's an honor.
All right. So first question, Abby. I mean, you seem to be pretty popular in your district. You've been in the House for a couple of terms. Why did you choose to jump to the Senate? I mean, I'm pretty sure you would get reelected to the House if you just wanted to stay there. So why move to the Senate?
Well, I wanted to continue the work that I promised in the House, that, continue that work into the Senate. I don't think people are used to politicians, and I'd like to say I'm not a politician, even though I am, in actually keeping their promises. I ran on being a conservative, watching the budget, protecting the unborn, protecting our Second Amendment rights, property tax relief. Like, I ran on those things because I went and knocked on, 1,700 doors and talked to the people. That was their issues. Banning men from women's sports, that was huge. And so when I went in, I promised to do that. And that will be my promise in the Senate. I'm going to tell you who I am. This is who I am. No surprise. Let's take those conservative values and that promise into the Senate.
Okay, you used the word conservative a couple of times, and
Yeah.
you and I know that thing gets thrown around like, I mean, it's better than hard candy at a parade. So what does it mean to be a conservative?
Well, I think this is such an interesting question that you asked, because I was just talking to somebody. Conservative has changed. Like, my vision of conservative, and you're fiscally conservative. You watch your budget. You want to make sure that we're not increasing taxes on people. We protect life. We stand for life at conception. We want to make sure that people aren't paying more than what government can grow. Like, those kind of like fundamentals of conservatism. And then now we have a new definition of conservatives, and somebody told me, they're like, it's like you are a vintage conservative. And I thought, that is an interesting idea. I didn't think I was vintage, but yeah, I mean, it's true. Conservative has changed. I think it has morphed. I haven't dug into what that is. But I think we are seeing a real change in Wyoming and in the Republican Party. And conservatism, to me, is not the same as someone else, even though they think they may be a conservative. The definition has changed.
Well, it's interesting to me because, and it always has been as long as I've been doing this show, because you always get my favorite one, perhaps you know him, was Michael von Flattern. I mean, that guy threw around the word conservative all over the place, and he had one of the worst voting records. Terrible on guns. I mean, he was just obscenely bad. But it is always the folks that claim, oh, yeah, I'm conservative, because they know that most people in Wyoming are. They watch their budget. They have to. They believe the reason they live in Wyoming is to be the heck away from just about everybody else. And so they want government to stay out of their lives. Free markets, free enterprise, keeping government out of business. You know, you live in a county where, I mean, the whole place is driven on energy. And the worst possible scenario, I think, for an energy company is when government sticks its nose into it. And I'm sure you, more than anybody, know that, I mean, that really hampers business. And it's, I mean, it's biting off our nose to spite our face. It's really, really terrible, if you ask me.
Yeah. Well, and being in a business where you're only buying guns usually if you have extra money. And if energy,
or if Joe Biden's the president.
Yeah. Actually, under a Democrat president, gun sales are usually really good.
I know, it's amazing.
People are fearful, you know. But part of the issue is how much money do you have? If it's a boom or bust economy in an energy sector, you know, we lived boom bust. It can be tough. So people do have to watch their budgets, and that's when I look at legislation that comes through, or I'm looking at a bill, I am thinking, how is this going to affect their life in the future? What is this going to do to their pocketbook, to the dinner table? Like, I look at those things, but I'm a mom. I've budgeted. I've been a stay-at-home mom a lot. Like, that's important. And it's important that I guess I have a different look and an out view on a bill that comes through, because I'm thinking, like, how's this going to affect my constituents at home?
Okay, so you're on the Appropriations Committee, pretty powerful committee. In your view, what's the one or two or three most important issues that Wyoming is facing right now?
Oh, Lord, you can't narrow it down to
I
three.
know.
Especially as an appropriator. I mean, you're looking at the whole shebang. I think the biggest issue, like, that I can just think off the top of my head, and they're all going to be equal. I mean, I am concerned with our education funding. We're looking at, you know, a deficit of upwards of $800 million in a few years.
Okay,
and
explain that.
So just a deficit in the spending. I mean, we're looking at our coal leases, and all of our mineral revenue has dropped. That used to feed our schools. In 2015, before everything fell out, we were coming in with, they call them FMRs, federal mineral royalties, for our school program at like $800 million a year. Once 2015 came, thank you, Obama, those dropped off to about 190 million a year. So when you were used to feeding schools and feeding your program, that's dropped out. And so now you hear from old appropriators, they're like, it's always looked like that. It's always, but being a conservative, it concerns me. So that's why we're just really trying to be cautious with our budget. Another issue I see is, economic development and it's just such an interesting, like, where are we at in that? And the state, there's a hard line of people who are like, yep, the state needs to be involved. And then you have people like, really? Does the state need to be competing with private business? I'm a private business. And certain entities in Wyoming Business Council, have given my competitors money. My tax dollars have gone to subsidize my competitor. So those are things like, where are we at on those programs? So that's a huge issue. I'm hearing from my constituents, they're concerned about transparency and economic development, period, whether it's data centers or nuclear. Not that they may be against it, but can they be involved? Can they understand what's going on? What can we do to put in some protections to protect them, to protect our resources? Those are all things that I'm hearing and seeing. And as an appropriator, like, okay, where are we at? And always roads, and you hear that a lot, that I really believe, and just sitting on appropriations and looking back, our infrastructure, just basic infrastructure, has not been funded. Our state forestry department, we just revamped that. And yes, we had to grow that part of government because that's a function of government. Our roads haven't been addressed. We put $3 billion over the last few years into savings and not addressed the roads. So we are addressing that in the Appropriations Committee. We decided to set aside about $67 million a year towards roads to help get us caught up, but it's going to take us 10 years. The cost of asphalt's only going up. It's $2 million a mile to pave a road.
Holy cow.
So, yeah. So, and probably more. That was 6 months to 8 months ago. That was the figure. I'm sure it's more now. But those are things that I'm looking at as an appropriator. Like, we just need to really focus on infrastructure.
Okay, we're in the middle of an election, and there's been a big push the last couple of years to kind of shore up our election system. There's been, God, I don't know how many bills that we've pushed through. So, considering that we're in an election, let's say you get in the Senate. What's the key election integrity bill that you think we need to pass, like number one on the agenda?
I think we need to pass paper ballots. For the most part, most of our counties are on paper ballots, but a couple of our larger counties are not. They're still on, they're on machines, not even tabulator machines. They're voting on a machine. That needs to end. It needs to be paper ballots and drop boxes. I think if we can get those two things, banning ballot drop boxes, they're not safe, they're not secure. I lived in Portland, Oregon, where I took my paper ballot and gave it to some guy on a corner of a street. This is horrifying to me now as a 21-year-old. However, that's how they did it. They would have, it's a big city. They'd have boxes. You'd shove it in there. You know that they just took those boxes. And I'm sure they saw us comment like Wyoming people like, oh, we know how they're going to vote.
Right.
But those are things that we need to make sure are secure. Those two things I think are paramount at this point. And those are easy bills. Those are pretty much, that's like a 70%, 80% issue. So I think if we can get those two things done, I would be happy with that.
Okay, now you're leaving the House of Representatives, and Lord knows, this is a totally unfair question, but it's my program, and I get to ask them. So what issues, you're leaving the House, what issues do you think still need to be addressed that maybe you worked on, or maybe your conservative colleagues in the House worked on? What are those issues that we need to continually focus on?
Sure. I think judicial reform is huge. That's going to be, I think, top of the list. And that's across the board. You're not just talking conservatives. You're talking our moderates are like, we got to do something. They know. That's an issue. Abortion it seems to be the battle. It's like they just want us to keep rehashing this. Abortion is going to be on there. One thing that I am really digging into, and I actually had the governor's office come down and ask me, like, would you run some tort reform, malpractice insurance? We need to reform that a little bit. That will help our, health insurance rates maybe a little, but it is something that our maternity wards are struggling with. Our hospitals are struggling with. The malpractice rates are extremely high, and there's a couple little tweaks we can do. Not a lot because of our Constitution, but that needs to be addressed. Something I'd like to take to the Senate.
Abby, this is Ken. Great to see you.
Hey, Ken. Yeah, you too.
Yeah, and especially where you can't reach me. So.
Oh, yeah.
Do you often slap Ken on the back of the head?
And she kicks me in the shins.
I kick him in the shins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I deserve it. I deserve it. There's no problem there. No, that last question, that's one that I love when people ask me. One of the problems in the Wyoming legislature, in my view, is that there has not been a good channel of cooperation between the two chambers. And to take a few of us from the House and begin to make some inroads into the Senate, that I think is going to be a tremendous help, because we have the chambers then perhaps working more together than has been in the past. And that's one of the things that I look for. And then I have to end that with the appropriations question. Wouldn't you agree?
I absolutely would agree. I think that's a great point. We have a great collaboration in the House. Regardless of what people are like, oh my gosh, they're all conspiring together and they're voting in a block. We all have similar views. We ran on a platform, on a promise, and so we have similar views. There's nothing wrong with that. But taking that, just that camaraderie and like, hey, we have a goal, we have a purpose, and taking that to the Senate, that's important. And I'm a bit of a peacemaker. I'm a pastor's kid, and so been in ministry a long time. I think it's important. I work well with the other side. I really do. And you have to. If you're going to serve the constituents of Wyoming, and we're not going to agree, but we have to work together. And so I think that's important. And I pride myself on saying I will work with the other side. Whatever we need to do, let's get it done for Wyoming.
It's interesting you bring up the whole, well, they vote in a block. The other side does too.
It does.
And actually, if you look at, and I was looking for it the other day, but usually evidence-based Wyoming has a visual representation of where people vote. And the reality is the folks on the other side, they're in this like little tight circle. And weird, they're all little blue dots. And then on the other side, you see the folks who generally vote, along with the conservatives, they're kind of spread out along the whole thing.
Yeah, if you pull up this last year's though, that is less so. I've done that because I wanted to use that graphic, and just as soon as you think you want to use a graphic, it changes. But I think part of it comes down to we were the ones that were driving the agenda, and we were working together to do that. And so we naturally try to kind of pull together. And then there were some things they could accept, some things they couldn't. They had different ways of fighting against it, and they got spread out a little more. So that's a little less true in this last session.
Well, and if I could just interrupt, it's something that I would like to say. That is the representation of the people. The people of Wyoming 2 years ago gave us a mandate, and they said, we are sick of status quo. We want true conservatives, the conservative value and mindset to go into the legislature. That is a representation of the Wyoming people, that graph. And I think that's what's important is there may be an agenda or people who don't vote conservative or don't vote with us, or they say we vote in a block. That representation of the Wyoming House is of the state of Wyoming, and it's beautiful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So let's say you're successful. What are the first 3 bills that you're introducing?
Well, I kind of talked about it, malpractice insurance reform. We need to work on that. 3 bills. Ooh, I'll have to think on that, on exactly it depends on what committees I'm on. So I'm on appropriations. Appropriators don't get to do a whole lot of bills. We're kind of shoved away.
Well, you spend a heck of a lot of money, though. Holy crap.
Oh, we do. There's times where I was like, I'm going to be sick. I can't spend any more of this. It's just, it's hard, especially as a frugal person, to look at that. But malpractice insurance it'll be a heavy lift. I think every lawyer in the state will come after me on it. So that's what I've heard.
Why is it Ken wants to jump in here.
I do. And Abby, I want to work with you on that, because one of the things that I got myself put on, and I know you're aware of this, is it's a task force to look at health. What can we actually do to alter or to affect healthcare?
Get out of the way.
And that's true. And this whole idea of tort reform is probably the most effective tool we might have. Yeah. And so I just wanted to throw that in there.
Well, and just in talking to our doctors, they're like, this would be really helpful. just this little tiny thing. Let me give you a scenario. I've said this on the floor, and I think it's important. In Rawlins, their maternity ward that was shut down, they were paying like $4 million in maternity malpractice insurance.
Holy cow.
They had 9 babies born. 9 babies does not pay $4 million in a premium. So this is like the crux of why we're losing that critical access care. And I talked to my hospital here, and the board members are like, our malpractice insurance is ridiculous.
That's crazy.
So yeah, other states have bounds on it. We don't. And so it needs to be addressed.
Okay. So I'm I'm publishing an article later today about a number of debates where candidates didn't show up. And I find it personally offensive when candidates just say, I'm just not going to be there. So why is it important for somebody running for office to go to all of these debates? I know here in Sheridan, I don't know how many there are, but there's a bunch of them. Why is it important that you go to these events?
Well, it's important to put your face in front of the people. If you are going to represent them at a state level in Cheyenne, you really need to be able to understand their concerns. They need to be able to understand you. And having a conversation or listening to a conversation face to face or in person is so different than on a platform piece of paper that you hand out at a door. I actually had someone last night, I was knocking on doors, and she said, I am so glad you actually put why you're running and what you've done. Because she's like, everybody says they're for Wyoming. She's like, what does that mean? And so it's so important to make that connection with the people that you want to represent. and I pride myself in that, in really putting the people first. Like I always say, I don't have an agenda given to me by like corporations or an outside group. My agenda is given to me by the people. And that I tread on that so lightly because it is utmost and the most important.
Excellent. All right. So last question, and then I want you to tell my viewers how they get a hold of you. But why should Campbell County citizens vote for Abby Angelos and not the other guy?
So I keep my promises. I have a proven track record of, exactly where I stand and what I'm going to vote on. I mean, you do. It's the benefit of moving into the Senate from the House of having that track record. I am open to work with anybody. Anybody can call me up. I am at every single meeting, I think, that any of my locals invite me to. I love to be there. It's so important. So I can give them that promise that I'm going to listen to them, put them first, and speak for them. And maybe they disagree with me. I'm okay with that. I welcome that. Sometimes people can change my mind on an issue, and I
heard you. I heard you guys don't listen to anybody.
We don't. No, yeah. No, it is important and just educating yourself. I don't know everything. And I think that's what you have to come into the legislature as, knowing this is an educational opportunity and you need to really truly listen to the people and understand that issue. So I'm happy to represent them. I love my job. I love what I do. And I just ask for their vote.
All right. How do we get a hold of you if my viewers want to talk to you?
So they can look me up on Facebook. I think it's Abby Angelos for Wyoming. I'm pretty active on there. You can go to my website, voteforabby.com, and it's all spelled out, vote for Abby. And more on what I've passed, what my platform is. Easy to get a hold of me. You can call me on the phone. My phone number, I think, is even listed on my Facebook page. So,
excellent.
Yeah.
All right, Abby. Well, I appreciate you taking the time this morning. Good luck in your campaign, and keep me updated. And I'm sure we'll talk later on in this election. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks, sir. Have a good day.
You too. All right. Well, that was Abby Angelos. She's running for the Wyoming Senate from Campbell County. So we're going to take another quick break. And when we come back, we've got Mr. Brent Bean in the studio. So a quick break, and we'll be back in a minute. Are you sick to death of being told what to think? Maybe you don't even realize that it's happening. Freedom Caucus bad, big spending, big government, liberal, Republican good. Conservatives are bad and they want to starve little children. I have heard it all, my friends. We are way past the time when the news was just the news, if it ever was. But wouldn't it be nice if you had a news platform that was at least honest about what they were telling you? News on the news page, opinion on the opinion page. That's exactly what the Open Range Record is. Go to the website, openrangerecord.com. News, analysis, opinion, and investigative journalism. One more time, that website is openrangerecord.com. You can listen and watch Cowboy State Politics live on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble every Tuesday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pay attention to all that other block-headed, Borg-like so-called news if you want. But if you want to get the real story, watch Cowboy State Politics live. And now, back to the program. Cowboy State Politics Live on a Thursday. Man, we got a busy program today. If you're just now joining us, this morning we've had Earl Collier, who's running for the House of Representatives. We just finished talking with Abby Angelos. She's running for the Wyoming Senate. And in just a few minutes, we're going to talk to Mr. Brent Bean, who thinks that he wants to be Wyoming's next governor. But before we get there, I've got a video for you that I told you I watched about half of the Politics in the Park from, I believe it was yesterday. And so I think I want to start with that video, and I just want you to listen very carefully. Because one of the biggest things that irritates me more than anything about a politician or a candidate is they just talk in platitudes, that there's nothing specific. Like, I want to know what you're going to do that's going to help my life, and I'm a person that I realize you have to have a plan. And if you just tell me, well, we're going to fix spending. Okay, fine. I'm on board with you. But what exactly are you going to do to fix spending? You say, well, the government spends too much, and I have no idea where all that money is going. Okay, great. I agree. But how are you going to fix that? I mean, I want to know specifics. So, Ken, go ahead and play the video from yesterday. Watch this. Listen closely to what they say.
Well, this is a great question because I think we should expect our leaders to prioritize and to tell you exactly what they plan to do. So number one is the economy. We have to make sure Wyoming has a strong economy where our kids can stay here, they can afford to live here, they have good jobs. And that all starts with energy. Because of our tax structure in the state of Wyoming, that's our bread and butter. And so ensuring that we are doing one thing, producing more Wyoming energy. And I'm the candidate with the experience in the business to be able to get it done. Number two is all around education. Our economy, foundational to the economy, is our education system. And if we have a strong public education system, that's exactly how we build a strong economy. And then last is about modernizing state government. The role of the governor is to govern and to ensure that your state government is working as efficiently as possible for each and every one of you. And ultimately, all of those things, the umbrella over those goals is to protect our values, our conservative way of life here in the state of Wyoming.
Now listen to this.
Thank you. So I mentioned limited government. To me, that means the governor leads in protecting our rights, our freedoms. Second Amendment, life, all those important things to you, transcend all other things. Next is government is supposed to be respectful and deliver efficient services, the ones you deserve and expect in a meaningful way. And finally, government needs to live within its means, live within the bounds of our budgets, certainly, but also not create a greater burden on you, the taxpayers. So limited government protects your freedoms, lives within its means, and delivers services in a respectful and effective manner. Thank you.
What? That's enough of that. What
Thank you.
the hell does any of that mean? There's not one single specific thing in anything that those two said. Now, the reason I didn't play what Brent Bean said is because I've got him sitting right here in front of me. But the problem here is these folks are asking for your vote, and they're not telling you what you're going to get in return. Man, if I'm going to fork over a $100 bill someplace at a business, I'm getting something in return. I mean, I know exactly what I'm paying for. And frankly, when you're asking me to fill in that little circle on a piece of paper, I want to know what the heck I'm getting. So first, Brent, welcome to the program.
Thanks, David.
You caught me a little fired up today.
Good. That was a good interview with Abby.
I really like Abby. I should have mentioned to have her tell her husband to call me. He's got one of my guns before it goes into the boating accident.
There you go.
All right, Brent. So I guess first, why don't you tell me, how things are going? How's the campaign? Where you been? What's going on?
Things are going great. The campaign, every county, this thing's exploding around the state. I think people are so tired of the establishment, and that's what they're not getting with me. I'm not tied to either the federal or the state bureaucracy, and I'm looking at this very objectively, a clean set of eyes, and it is about leadership. And I think people are looking for something different, and that's what they're going to get with me.
Okay, so again, like be specific.
Yeah.
What are those different things that I'm going to get if I fill it? I don't know if I'm going to vote for you or not.
Yeah.
But if I fill in that circle for you.
Sure. Well, they're going to get it. They're going to get accountability for one. I want everything audited. The Department of Audit sits underneath the governor, as you know. We created the management audit committee decades ago, and nothing's ever happened. But every taxpayer in this state, given that we just passed the largest budget in our state history, and everybody's still complaining about not having enough money. And I want to know where all this money's going. I said, that's right. I want to know where all this money's going. I want to know. I want to make sure that this money's being spent statutorily according to its intended purpose. And every taxpayer deserves to know the final resting place of every tax dollar. So that is one of my absolute top priorities. And that alone will help build back the trust, I believe, from the citizenry. Because quite frankly, the one thing I've noticed across the state is very few people in this state trust any level of government. And they have to. Somehow we got to garner some level of trust back. And because if we do, our rightful spot is #1 state in the nation. I'm so tired of hearing about Florida and all these other states, doing this stuff. But we should be leading the headlines, not any other state.
Well, and there are a number of areas where we absolutely should be leading. And it infuriates me to no end when we have elected officials, the governor, who, for whatever reason, forgot that maybe we need a coal export port. That the legislature gave him the tools to go after that, and he didn't act until it was too late. I mean, how could we possibly be the country's #1 energy producer? And we are, but how can we continue to do that when we're shooting ourselves in the foot like that?
Well, this false ideology that the current governor and a lot of his fellow legislators have bought into we know it's malarkey. We know it's a hoax. We need carbon dioxide to live, and roughly about 0.04% of our atmosphere that we're sitting in right now is carbon dioxide. We need it for plant growth. The more carbon dioxide we have, the less water we need. Those kind of things. Once we get below a certain level of about 0.022 or whatever it is, people start dying. Things start dying, and we need it. So I think people have bought into this climate change hoax, and it's just a false narrative all the way across the board.
All right, so let's hit the nail on the head. Yeah. You heard me go on and on and on about how I'm irritated that I don't hear any specifics. What are you going to do?
Well, one of the first things I want to do with energy, there's a few bills I want repealed right up front. But first and foremost is HB 200. It came out in 2020, and it basically mandated this carbon capture technology to be put on coal-fired power plants. And
wait a minute. So we have a carbon capture law in Wyoming?
We do. Came out in 2020. This is all part of the governor's net negative, when he was trying to decarbonize the West here in the Western Governors Association when he chaired it. And regrettably, people have bought into this. A lot of our legislators bought into it, and they passed this bill. It was signed into law in 2020. And what it did is it mandated that coal-fired power plants implement this technology to reduce the carbon footprint, basically, carbon emissions, and to capture those, reliable energy, those kind of things. The problem is what we've seen. The proof is in the numbers. Look at our GDP. Our GDP is 0.7%. The national average is 2.4%. The state runs on energy. We export almost 80% of our energy. And nobody in this state, really, I want our energy cost per person in this state to be at or near zero because we produce so much. But what this has done is they allowed the power companies, whatever one it is, to basically allow power bill increases for the people to actually pay for this. So we've seen up to nearly 30% increases in our power bills. And this is a blue collar retirement state. So it's just inexcusable what's gone on. I think this has stifled our economy in a huge way, and I want it repealed. That's why we got to get the right legislators in there. We've got to, because I'm going to call for it right away. We got to make sure that Ken gets in there, all these, Tony Locke, all these other good ones around the state actually get in there to repeal this thing and make this happen.
I think that's an excellent plan. Yeah. I mean, it is absolutely offensive to me that we are the #1 energy producer in the country, and yet we have policies, laws in place that absolutely hamper that industry. I mean, I find that absolutely horrendous.
So you mentioned getting good legislators in there.
That's right.
Before you even did that, I started pulling up the digest on that particular bill.
That's right.
And let me get rid of that little.
Blue thing. Oh, look at
Yeah,
whose name is
it
listed
is
first.
interesting to look at the names and see who was on what side. And you go down through the digest, and it doesn't change much. There were some stalwart conservatives, and Mike Ian, who said no. I'm not sure what Mike Ian's reason was, but
I don't either.
But yeah, it takes the right butts in the right seats to make something happen.
Now, I just played a video of where a candidate was talking about energy, and he's from Campbell County. He knows. And look, I mean, Ken, put that back up there for a minute.
I can't right away.
All right. Well, it's on my screen too. Go ahead and.
No, I deleted it from my. I'd have to go look it back up.
No, just show my screen.
Okay. You have to be really clear with me.
Oh, there it is. Eric Barlow.
Eric Barlow.
First on the list.
That's right.
All right. So we repeal this. Then what happens?
Well, then I think we should see right away energy costs starting to come down in the state because that requirement will come off. And this is one of those things that it had to be looked at every 2 years, starting in 2023, 2025, in perpetuity, really. And I think that the one thing I do want to do is I want to go back to the table and renegotiate our mineral royalties. Right now we get 48%, the Fed gets 52. I want to go right to the table and at least go for 50-50, if not more. My objective would be a 60-40 split, but at an absolute minimum, we need to go 50-50 on this. And which, case in point, with that Montana judge that just recently ruled that all these leases are null and void.
Yeah.
I will tell you right now that as governor, there is no way we're paying back that $50 million. We're just not going to. If the Fed wants to subtract that from future, monies coming into the state, they can do it, but we're not paying it back. Obviously, we'll appeal it. And but this is the kind of overreach that we keep succumbing to. And I always look back at Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, all the enumerated authorities, the 17 enumerated authorities that give, those are the authorities that Congress has. And then, of course, you have the 10th Amendment, which anything not covered in there, the state has, and then naturally you have the Supremacy Clause. But, bottom line is these activist judges, and of course with FLTMA, the Federal Lands Planning and Management Act, that needs to be put back in the box again because that's governing almost all of these all these frivolous lawsuits out there, and it's empowering the NGOs, the nonprofits, to go out and shop for judges around the nation. And once they find one, they keep going back, kind of like this fellow up in Montana. They keep going back to them, and it's all about shutting down our energy production. It's these people who bought into this climate change agenda, and we've got a generation, if not two, who have been lied to for so long that when they finally hear the truth about carbon dioxide and all these other things that we need, that they refuse to believe it because they've been lied to for so long. So that's one of the issues too, is that I want to do right away, is start changing these narratives. These are horrible narratives out there. Like I say, these younger folks have been lied to for a long time, but and then really pushing with Borgum and of course with Trump to get these leases going. Because we know the permitting, the leasing for these, particularly up in the area you're talking about, up in Campbell and the northeast side of the state, is to get these things going. We've got to do this because we know that the energy companies, the extractive industry needs some level of certainty. And I will tell you this also goes even further, is that I do believe that it's a national security issue for us not to have the 48% of the land that the federal government, it's under, unappropriated land under federal management. The reason why I say that is because anytime there's a new change in federal administration, then everything becomes volatile again. Now we got to comply with a whole new set of EPA regs, all these other things. So there's no certainty in the energy market. So we've got to somehow, and I know we can do this. And this comes down to the governor sets the tone for the state. And bottom line is, he's not going to be walked on anymore, with me, because I've had enough of this. But it is one of those things, as you look at it all the way across the board, that we've got to do certain things right away to get this going. And repeal of HB 200 is one of the very first things I'm going to call for. And then we'll look at those other things also right away. There's a lot of simultaneous and congruent actions that we're going to take to get, my objective here obviously is to lower the cost of living in this state, thereby allowing people to raise their standard of living. And the best way to do that is to lower energy costs.
Absolutely.
All the way across the board.
and I often go back to what Harriet said, that there's a special place in hell for people that intentionally increase the price of energy.
That's right.
And it's in Wyoming, there is no excuse for it. I mean, we are the nation's #1 energy producer, and not in every county, but just about every county you go to, there's some form of mineral development. Up here in the Northeast, it's coal and oil and natural gas. You go down to the Southwest, Trona.
That's right.
I mean, we are a gigantic energy producer, and uranium. Uranium's a big one. I mean, we have, as I understand it, we have the largest deposit of uranium in the country, right here.
That's right. That's right.
And at the same time, now, I don't know necessarily about the uranium, but at the same time, we have passed policies that hamper those energy industries. And it's not just HB 200, though. That's a big one.
That's a big one. Well, we have, and this is the problem, and this does come back down to, if it's federal. One thing I want to make sure is that our state regs, because we need to rework DEQ and the Industrial Siting Council. Those are some of the things, because I want to make sure that this process here is not any more tenuous than what's at the federal level. I mean, it should be less. It's kind of like the grazing leases. I hear from around the state that, oh yeah, we don't want that federal land back because the state grazing leases may be more expensive or it's more tenuous, whatever the deal is. It should never be that way. And we got to do the same thing with our energy,
Now, a topic I didn't cover at the beginning of the program, but I wanted to, talked about it on the podcast yesterday, is, Brent, are you going to become a peacemaker? There's this pledge going around. Are you going to be nice to everybody?
My loyalty will always be to the people of Wyoming, and whatever it takes to make that happen, I'll do. I see a lot of these as hypocrisy. I see it as virtue signaling, kind of like BLM, Black Lives Matter. Next thing we know, we have Juneteenth, right? Because everybody got on, or a lot of folks got on board with this. Bottom line is I'm a Christian. I live my life that way, and I stick to the facts. I stick to the black and white. And I stay away from, personal smears. I just don't do that. But when the time comes to call people out on issues, that's exactly what I'll do. So I don't need to sign anything to prove I'm a Christian or anything else. That's obviously God knows the heart. So yeah, I just don't buy into that. Also, it would squander, or I guess subdue, my First Amendment rights. On standing up for the folks. So yeah, I'm not going to do it.
And I think it's another example of kind of and Ken, maybe you can speak to this, but I think that there's a real go along to get along attitude that happens in Cheyenne, and often I think that it allows some really terrible policy to move through the legislature. We don't want to make anybody mad. Hey, you just vote for this; it'll be okay this time. What do you think, Ken?
Yeah, what they want to do is shut us up. The problem is that somebody needs to stand up and resist. And when you stand up and resist, this is the way things have always been. This is the way they should be. Who are you to do that? You're in here being destructive. Yeah, I'm in here to be destructive because what you have created, what you have constructed, needs to be torn the hell down. And this whole idea, and it always upsets me when they try to, people who have no idea about Scripture, try to throw that at us and say, oh, you should be more Christ-like. He's the one that walked into the temple with a whip and drove the evil people out. The peace that is spoken about in Scripture is peace with God. It's not peace between men. Jesus even came and he said, I didn't come to bring peace, but to bring a sword. And brother will be set against brother and all of these other things, because friendship with the world is enmity with God. And if you're going to go make peace with evil, you got a problem. No, I ain't going to be a peacemaker either.
Well, and here's the other thing that fries me about it, is that if you are willing to sacrifice your principles to just make peace, because that's what this thing is about. Okay, it's not about what it's written in that pledge.
Peace is you shut up and take our...
Yes, that is what it is. So a large number of the people that signed this thing are the very people that not even a week ago were doing exactly the opposite of what they signed up. They're the very people that will say...
Ogden.
Yeah, Ogden Driscoll, perfect example. They're the very people... Peter Boyer, okay? Not 1 week ago, he's calling all the people that disagree with him incapable of understanding their own incompetence. And then the very same day, he's putting out a statement that says, oh, you know, these people that disagree with me, they're not morons. Okay. It is all lip service. And the intent of that pledge is to shut conservatives up, because apparently now, if you question somebody's policies, that you question how they're going to do something, apparently somehow that's an attack. I'm done with the go along to get along thing. I think that gets us things like HB 200.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same. I mean, I will never compromise my principles. That's just the way it is. You know, I think, and this is so much deeper, I think, than this, because we know that the media drives a lot of this. And, you know, way back, and part of this really was perpetuated even more. It kind of, the accelerator, you know, was kind of stepped on under the Obama administration. And it was under an NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, back in 2013, I believe, 2012, 2013. And so way back in 1948, under the Smith-Mundt Act, it specifically said that the government, any government in the nation, could not propagandize the American people. Well, we know this was going on anyway. But that was rescinded, you know, under Obama administration. He signed it into law. So what that basically did is allowed the government to propagandize all Americans, you know, and it just opened the door for everything. So we know that the media perpetuates a lot of this stuff, and we know that the media is left-leaning, other than you, Dave, and it's one of those things. They want to get people to start fighting, and this comes down to, when I talk about a principled conservative, it's being absolutely grounded in how you were raised, what you believe in, but the individual sovereignty, the self-governance, the American exceptionalism, and absolute truth, because bottom line, God makes the rules, and that's just the way it is, and we have to believe that. We got to be willing to go to the mat for it.
All right, so we've got a comment on the screen here, and it says, Brent is the only conservative in the race. His vision is true, and his intelligence on matters above the norm. We've endured. Keep Wyoming. Let's not be sold out to like Colorado and Montana. So, hey, you got a fan out there. Somebody listening.
All right, well, thank you.
That likes you.
Yeah.
All right, Brent. So we talked about energy. We talked about how that's a really, really dumb pledge. So what else are you hearing on the campaign trail? What are the big issues that you hear when you're like everywhere, so you should have a pretty good bead on what people are thinking.
You know, there's some nuances out there, but predominantly the underlying tones or the overtones, whatever you want to look at them, one is government overreach, whether it's federal or state. People are PO'd at that. People are PO'd at overtaxation. And again, they have very little trust in government. It's kind of a combination of those. And just the lack of accountability across the board. They see, you know, kind of a Weston County, you know, with the clerk over there, they see that, okay, nothing happened right away. So, but the other government officials that are out there, and that's 1 out of every 4 employed people in this state, you know, they see what happened there. They see that there's really no justice, I guess, in the end, and I guess there may be some here coming. Who knows what's going to happen here? But they realize right there that, hey, they can get away with anything. And what we have, we lack the will in government to remove people. You know, we were founded on a meritocracy. You know, you bust your butt, you get going, you know, and if you make it in the end, you're good to go. You know, but at least you have the chance. At least you have the opportunity here in America to do that. And that's not the way our government works. And example after example's out there. People see it. They realize that I mean, you know, the Johnson County case, the audits, the failed audits, over and over. 9 years. 9 years, and then the Supreme Court rules that the people do not have standing to see how their money's being spent. People have had enough of this. And that cannot be used as a precedent in the other 22 counties. This is why when I talk about trust through transparency, accountability through audit, and making sure we enforce the laws and we get rid of people as we need to, I do believe that there are folks down there that truly want to make things in government, that truly want to make it work. I do believe that there's a lot of leadership issues, and this comes down. We all have self-interest because we're humans, but we have to put the interest of the state and the people herein first. We've got to do it, and we've got to remember, though, most of all, and this is what I keep trying to remind people all across the state, because there's a sense of being dispirited because of all those factors we talked about, is that, you know, we're Americans. We're Wyoming Americans, and we got to remember, just because we are Wyoming Americans, that puts us one step above the other 49, period. I mean, we are such an incredible state. We're such a great people, and we got to remember that, because if we don't believe how great we are, it's going to be really tough to win, and we have to. We got to remember how great we are. That's why I need a legislature, folks out there, that if you got somebody running, whoever that is, obviously here in the studio we got Ken. We got to get Ken in there as a senator. That we've got to get the right folks in there who truly believe in American exceptionalism, Wyoming American exceptionalism, right? And just how great we are, and not put up with the stuff that's going on. We should never, ever settle for mediocrity. We should expect and demand absolute excellence out of government. And my objective is to put people first, making sure that the institutions are accountable to the people and not to the bureaucracy, and set the tone across the state.
I love it. I love it. Well, Brent, I appreciate you taking the time to come into the studio. I know you've been traveling all over the place. Pretty big announcement, HB 200. Can't wait to see how that happens. But that'll pretty much do it for today's installment of the broadcast. Have a good rest of your week. Oh, wait a minute. We're going to be here tomorrow for weekend. See here, I'm all excited and messed up. Tomorrow is Open Line Friday. We'll be back in the studio.
So if I wanted to call Brent, how would I do that? How do I contact you?
Oh, sorry, I even missed that part.
Thanks, Ken. I tell you, they can come up to my website at brentbn.com. That's brentbn.com. Phone number 307-763-3442. The phone rings all the time. I get all sorts of texts. And, we don't have a staff like the other folks do, but what's been so amazing is that this is an entire volunteer effort. Nobody's getting paid for any of it. I will tell you, just if I could close on this one thing, is that case in point to that whatever they wanted us to sign is that
the pledge.
The
bullcrap. I mean,
it's the reason I have not solicited endorsements from anybody. Now I'll fill out endorsements, and we'll see how that plays out. Surveys, whatever they want to do, and if folks want to endorse or whatever the entity is, like Wyoming Right to Life or something like that, then I'll take it. But the number one reason is because I will not be indentured to anybody other than the folks of this state. I won't be indentured to any state bureaucracy, any federal bureaucracy. I don't want any perceived or subliminal ties in there, because what needs to happen in this state, some of these major muscle movement things that need to happen in this state, I don't want any impediments, whether they're perceived or not, to doing that and coming out. And because we have got to change this paradigm about putting people first again. That's why I don't do that.
Well, why do you think I endorsed you? I hope to have some leverage there. You telling me I can have the leverage? That's all off.
All right, my friends. That'll do it for today's installment of the broadcast. We'll see you tomorrow. It'll be Open Line Friday. Have a good afternoon. Talk to you later.